Hey everybody, welcome back to The Green Life, episode 107 with a very special guest. Not only is this guest a returning one, but also he was my first one. So I welcome Dr. Joel Fuhrman, who is my favorite person to speak about nutrition because his way of approaching nutrition does resonate with me, makes a lot of sense, and the Nutritarian lifestyle is something wonderful. Now, we went in a little bit of a debate about herbs and what he believes they are and how they work and if they do. And it made me really think about a few things. Of course, he will not agree with everything other doctors do. There is a little bit of controversy in there, but I was really keen to have a very fiery episode. I didn't know his opinion up to today. It was very expressed with a lot of passion and a lot of straightforwardness, which is one of the hallmarks of Dr. Ferman. He doesn't hold back. He says it as it is, and I kind of like that. So I'm very happy to get challenged. I'm very happy to have conversations. Whether I agree with everything or not, it doesn't matter. I really believe that there is an open conversation about everything in the health space, and it should be this way to have science move forward, to have a natural ways move forward, and to, in a way, also support our belief systems. So before we get into the episode, which is going to be an interesting one, please listen to it. I want to thank Nama for the J2 juicer and the C2, and if you want a discount code, go into the show notes and grab one. But also big shout out to my affiliate accounts with Dr. Moses Herbs, Good Green Vitality of New Zest, which is my favorite product, but also the other proteins that they sell, which are amazing and functional, as well as in the workshop. And of course, check out my work and my retreats, which are dedicated to women. It's by women, for women. We are truly working to make metabolic health a priority for women, but also understanding hormones and live a lifestyle that can do that in a kind way based on plants. All right, guys, without further ado, let's jump into the episode with Dr. Ferman. Welcome back, Dr. Ferman. Hello, Dr. Ferman. Thank you so much for being back on The Green Life. You were my first guest on the podcast to celebrate, and I'm so happy to have you back here, especially as you've been doing so much amazing work. And I've seen you actually been talking to quite a lot of people and sharing amazing wisdom about healing and, of course, your Nutritarian approach, which is fantastic. So, first of all, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm honored to be your first guest and to be back here today.
Thank you. Today we're going to talk about how to heal from disease using our lifestyle and diet, which is incredibly important because I feel like sometimes we get a little bit lost into so many protocols and we get lost into so many even medical practices, and we get scared and I think and also we get lost into the many names of diseases, right? But when it comes to healing the body, I feel like you and I always go back to the fact that to give the body what it needs a basic, and the basic is what we eat every day and how we feed our mind and how we live, right? So people know you, they know how you've evolved, they know the work that you've done, but I love to dive a little bit into how do you look at disease now that your practice has changed too. You don't have just a clinic, you have a retreat, so you actually welcome people to come and change their lifestyle with you. It's not just about the, coming to get a checkup. And how do you look at disease now? How do you see it really in comparison to before when you were a practicing doctor in a clinic?
Well, I see it the same way. It's just that I have a more effective approach because instead of seeing a person for a half an hour or an hour, I see them for 2 or 3 months, or at least a month. So I'm eating with them, living with them, lecturing to them, exercise with them, or watching, so I'm watching everything they do and making sure they're doing everything right. And they have complete abstinence from their self-destructive behaviors and self-destructive foods. And when you put a person into such a powerful healing environment where we're giving them salad and sprouts and raw onions and mushrooms and soups, and when you're feeding them so carefully with no added salt, no added oil, and no added sweeteners other than the fruit. So fruit's the only sweetener. So we call it SOS free. sugar, salt, and oil free, which I'm sure you and some people who are listening know what that means. But what I'm saying right now is that when you do this really strictly with such type of enforced abstinence, and the person is not left on their own to do it 90%, the results you get are spectacular. It seems to 90% isn't half as good as doing it 100%. You know, I've been saying lately, the money is in the last 5%. That means that you see all the incredible benefits when you do it 100%. When I wrote Eat to Live in 2004, I wrote a 6-week diet plan so people would get into this, lose weight, and then I allowed them to say, do it 90%, at least 90%. If you want to go off 10%, but I wouldn't say that today. I consider that I actually no longer agree with myself on that, because over the last 30 years, and particularly the last 20 years since I wrote that book, so many people have been messed up by that, by allowing them to cheat or allowing them to dabble in their addictive foods, which just lit the fire under the desire to want them more, made their weight yo-yo, and they didn't get the miraculous results that I see and I get when people do it 100%. So it's amazing how just 10% can sabotage the benefits. Just going off it a little bit can sabotage the benefits.
I know. I actually agree with you, because we also have different opinions of what 10% is. It's not really measurable when people do it on their own.
Yeah, because when they start doing, it's like telling an alcoholic to just drink alcohol on the weekends. It just makes them wanting alcohol all the time.
Yeah.
When if we're telling people that pizza and Italian bread and bagels and croissants and commercial baked goods, that is cocaine. That's a drug addiction. They flood the body with a caloric rush of sugar, which then changes the wiring of your brain. And it makes you crave the caloric rush, the sugar rush in your blood.
Yeah.
And the person no longer is in control of their behavior. The desire for that mental hit is there, that's always competing with their cerebral brain knowing they should eat healthy foods. And I've added a new concept here, which is that the caloric rush doesn't just happen from sugar and white flour. It also, and white flour pasta and white potato and white rice. The caloric rush also happens from animal fats and oils, even olive oil, especially when you fry or heat oil and you cook food in oil. What I'm saying right now is that there are two classifications of foods. The high glycemic carbohydrate, which were taught in the white bread, and I'm saying white bread is the same as eating sugar right from a bowl and putting it in your mouth. It is sugar. Turns into bloodstream is sugar. And when you pour oil on your food, or when you cook with oil, those calories go into the bloodstream within 3 to 5 minutes. You're talking about 200 calories from oil and 200 calories from sugar in your bloodstream, 400 calories in the blood at one time. There's no way you could put 400 calories in the blood at one time if you ate vegetables or if you ate beans, if you ate nuts. Look, I can eat 200 calories from beans, but it's going to take 3 hours for those calories to slowly enter the bloodstream at 1 or 2 calories a minute. I can eat 250 calories from nuts or seeds, from sunflower seeds, cashews, hemp seeds, walnuts, flax seeds, but those calories went to the bloodstream at 1 to 2 calories a minute over a 3 or 4 hour period. You only put 5 to 10 calories in the bloodstream at one time, not 300 to 400 calories in the bloodstream at one time.
Yeah.
This spike of fat calories in the blood, which then which actually affects the opiate centers and the dopamine centers in the brain to the same amount in the same biological areas as you would get if you took opiates, narcotics. This caloric rush is the food equivalent of narcotics and drugs. And it controls people. Now their behavior is controlled by the desire for their habituation to that caloric rush. So they have a meal with a vegetable bean soup, a salad with a sesame seed dressing, or some roasted garlic and broccoli and red onion or something, whatever they're eating. It's not going to satisfy them. They're still feeling empty unsatisfied. They got to have an ice cream. They got to have a bagel. They got to have some French fries. They got to have a chocolate bar. They got to have something fried, something greasy, something heavier, something sweeter. They've got to, and they don't feel like they ate unless they got that rush of calories in the bloodstream. Excuse me. So what I'm saying right now is that when people separate themselves from that caloric rush for a period of time, weeks to months, then the desire for those to overeat and the desire to feel the need for that type of hyper-palatable and hypercaloric foods diminishes over time. And you're satisfied with the vegetable bean soup and a mango and a salad. You don't have to have ice cream cone to be satisfied. You're satisfied with what the point is that you get back instinctually in touch with the right amount of calories your body needs, and you don't feel like you need to overeat. But that takes time to achieve that. So too many people got messed up because they try to eat healthfully. And when they're eating healthfully, they supply enough nutrients and they get better enough to still feel the detox and to feel the rash that itches and to still feel the fatigue and still feel the brain fog and still feel the joint pain. But they can't finish the self-cleansing and the detoxification that allows their body to totally get well, because that takes time and that takes dropping the body fat stores lower. We need to get the body fat very low to get rid of the inflammatory response, because I'm saying that inflammation is promoted by body fat and the immune system is suppressed by excess body fat. And estrogen promotion raises up and insulin resistance raises up and everything, all these hormones and all the inflammatory markers raise up, and the people can't get well. And so many people, just 1 or 2 cheats a week, interfere with them seeing any progress. I'll give you a story. There's one guy who came into my guest house in when I used to live in Flemington, New Jersey, and it would be in downtown Flemington. There'd be luncheonettes and fast food restaurants and bakeries all around but they'd come in and I would take away their car keys, their credit cards, their wallets, their cash. I'd lock it in the safe. They could walk around town, but they couldn't buy anything. So at the first week he was there, he lost 7 pounds. The second week he was there, he lost 14 pounds. By the 18th day, he lost 18 pounds. He lost 1 pound a day like clockwork until the 18th day. And he walked around town and he followed the diet and he was feeling great. On the 19th day, he went with Steve, who was my house manager. He went downtown to New York City to a vegan singles dance. And at that place, he had he was significantly overweight, but he had a corn muffin and a little macaroni salad with mayonnaise. And he comes back the next morning, he's 3 pounds heavier, gained 3 pounds overnight, just from a little corn muffin and macaroni salad. So he gains back 3 pounds. Eventually, he got the 3 pounds off, but not for another week.
Yeah.
So he wound up getting 0 results the fourth week he was there, after getting a pound a day the first 3 weeks. And then, of course, he started losing again once he consistently stayed with the diet. But the point I'm making is people say, I'm doing the program. I'm following, but I'm not seeing those results. I'm only going to a restaurant once a week, or I'm only doing this once, I'm only going off at 1 or 2 meals a day, a week. And well, there it is. That's why you're not seeing the results. It's just, we saw over time, because losing weight and getting healthy is not just about eating less calories. It's that when you are flooding your body with nutrients and you're removing the toxicity and the acidity of your tissue, your body drops a lot of water that it doesn't need to hold on to anymore. This person that gained 3 pounds didn't put 3 pounds of fat back on. He swelled with water, and people are losing that. They lose, 15 pounds the first 15 days. They didn't lose 15 pounds of fat. They might have lost 7 pounds of fat, but they lost so much extra water weight that the body was holding on to because the body was toxic.
Yeah.
So weight loss has to do with active detoxification and active removal of waste products and removing of extra moisture your body doesn't need to hold on to at the same time.
Yeah.
So that's what reduces the inflammatory response. The minute you start putting the toxins back in, you stimulate inflammation, the disease process goes on, and the psoriasis could flare up, the pain in your shoulder from rheumatoid, in other words, you start to see flare up of the disease process. So we've seen so many hundreds of people, or even thousands of people, that as they lose weight, we can measure the inflammatory markers that increase the risk of cancer and heart disease. Like you can tell, like myeloperoxidase, oxidized LDL, HSCRP. You can measure these inflammatory markers that go up when a person's gaining weight and go down when a person's losing weight. What I'm saying right now is the person is not down to their optimal weight, but the fact that they're eating right and they're losing weight steadily, 3 to 4 pounds a week, their inflammatory markers get normal, even when they're still overweight. But then they leave here, right? Let's say they leave here, they've lost 50 pounds, they're still 40 pounds overweight. And they go to a cruise, let's say, a cruise vacation, or to Las Vegas and have the buffets, and they gain back 10 pounds. Well, even though they've lost 50 pounds and they gain back 10, they're still 40 pounds less. The inflammatory markers will go right back to where they were, being dangerous because they're in the process of gaining weight and they stop the process of losing weight. So I say that a Nutritarian is somebody who is eating so healthfully and is at their ideal weight, or is eating so healthfully and moving in the direction of their ideal weight, because that could save their life. You have to keep moving in that direction. The minute these people stabilize their weight at an overweight condition or gain weight, you start to see the measurable parameters that put themselves at risk, particularly at risk of having a clot or a heart attack or a stroke too.
That is so true. I think, first of all, you mentioned how people start feeling, fatigued, and so the healing crisis come up.
Right.
And how do you approach the healing crisis? Because people always freak out when they start having the symptoms, obviously coming up from detoxification, which is a normal process, but we're not used to it. People are used to feeling bad, but they don't notice almost until like they're doing a program, and then they feel slightly worse and they think, was never there. Just it's happening now because I'm eating all these fresh food and fruit and vegetables. So how do you tackle that part to educate people?
That's 100% true and very important. So when people first come under my care, I tell them that I expect them to feel worse over the first week. Number one, we warn that in advance, and we tell them that's good. That's why there's no caffeine in the facility, no coffee here, and I don't want you to take Motrin, Advil, Tylenol, and any taking drugs. We want you to feel, you might feel worse the first few days, but keep in mind that generally improves by day 4. And it usually is highest on day 3. On day 2 and 3, by day 4 and 5, you're feeling better. It's not going to be that bad. I had this is already already a week into the month. So I've had people arrive about a week ago. And yesterday, one of the people who arrived here had severe stomach cramping and spasm, and which almost felt like going to the hospital. I said, let's put some warm compresses. Let's, get some massage, and you'll stay here and you'll see how you're feeling better tomorrow. It's not, it's not a gallbladder attack. It's not happening there. It's not a heart attack. This is going to go away and relax. Your body's flooding out all types of, and of course the next day he was totally better. It was totally gone. But if I wasn't around to have warned him and calmed him down, he was going to head off to the emergency room, and they would have just shoved him with, injected him with pain-killing drugs, and made his body more toxic again. So it's part of the educational process to let people know that the headache itself, the pain, is the healing. Taking away the pain is building disease and put toxins back in. The drugs for headaches, of course, Escit, Wygain, Furanol, Furoset, Midrin, Excedrin, these drugs' active ingredients are barbiturates, narcotics, and caffeine. They push the poisons back into the body because that's the cause of the headache. The toxins that are coming out are the toxins you give the body to push it back. So taking poisons makes the body more tolerant and accepting of poisons for a while. But then the body starts to get in better shape again, and it'll start to push those poisons out again. But so even the utilization of Motrin or acetaminophen or ibuprofen, Advil, even these drugs 1 or 2 times a week can turn an occasional headache into a chronic headache syndrome and make a person develop chronic migraines. Then they're on more serious medications, and they have headaches all the time. So we've been indoctrinated by our cultural system to think that the disease is the symptom that we're experiencing, not the cause. We live in a crazy society, and the medical profession is empirical, which means you give a person a poison to help with some symptom, But the poison, of course, makes the person more toxic and increases the risk of cancer. It's one of the reasons why, in spite of modern medical care and in spite of access to modern medical care, lifespan hasn't gone up. In the United States or Western Europe or the world, we've seen actually lifespan diminish, and cancer rates have continued to climb for the last 40 years.
Yeah.
Autoimmune diseases have paralleled the growth of autoimmune diseases. Autism and mental disorders have paralleled the rise in cancer. So we've seen tremendous growth in disease. And the medical profession is not making people live longer. They're making people live shorter lives under this idea that, my blood pressure is good now. Of course, you're on 4 medications. If your blood pressure is good, I don't have high blood pressure, it's good. No, you have high blood pressure. You're on 4 medications that control it. If there's no such thing as medications, and medications could not control blood pressure, then 20 years ago, your doctor would have forced you to eat carrots and celery and salad and exercise and wild blueberries. And he would have forced you to get away from fried foods and processed foods and commercial baked goods and cooked meats. And he would get you on eating healthy, have you get thinner and lose weight and get the salt out of your diet. And you would have gotten rid of your high blood pressure. But now that he can give you medication, you can keep living in the same diet style that caused the problem to begin with. So whether your blood pressure is high or not because of the medication, you are still increasing the atherosclerosis, the stiffening, and the aging of your bloodstream, of your blood vessels every day, bringing you closer and closer to having a heart attack. Actually, the blood pressure medication is now the cause of your heart attack because now you think it's okay to keep eat the foods that are causing the problem. So now the doctor, because your blood pressure looks okay, is allowing you to continue to imbibe in self-destructive behavior. So I'm saying that most of what doctors do is not harmless or worthless. It's actually harmful because they'd be better off if they hadn't been able to have the ability to be exposed to covering up the symptoms. Now, that doesn't mean that emergency medical care and there's a lot of things doctors do that are helpful too. But most of what they do is give people drugs to deal with to help them not feel the symptoms of their dietary choices.
Yeah,
that's mostly what doctors do, and that has caused an unbelievable amount of deaths, needless deaths, and suffering, including an explosion of autoimmune conditions like rheumatoid arthritis and psoriasis and ulcerative colitis, and not just autism and mental illness.
Yeah,
but the number one cause of death in children is acute blastocytic leukemia, and children get leukemia and get brain tumors, and they die of it. And they get lupus, and they die of it. And these diseases are linked back to the diet, not just the mother ate during pregnancy, but even the foods the mother ate before she got pregnant, even years before. And, you can get toxins from seafood and these PCBs and chemicals and plastics and in your body that could take, 4 to 5 years to start to get out of your body.
Yeah.
But
Okay,
what I'm
going to touch a little bit on that actually before you continue, because the seafood part, because I know that you changed your mind throughout the years about even taking supplements for EPA and DHA. So your opinion on having fish and seafood, is it, can people have it in a mindful way, or they should avoid it completely? First question. And second question, what is your opinion now about taking those supplements?
Right. You're right. I used to probably think when I was younger that having some oysters once a month or having some sardines or small fish, they weren't like eating barracuda and tuna and shark and, there were bigger fish that had more toxic metals in them. But I thought probably it was okay to get some of the smaller fish occasionally in your diet to get a little zinc and DHA and EPA and B12 and, little extra seafood design nutrients might have been okay. But in subsequent years, with so much dumping of garbage in the ocean, combined with agricultural runoff, leading to a combination of more plastic and microplastics in the waterways, and more nitrogenous waste that cause more algae overgrowth, and the cyanobacteria grow on the algae. And so now we're seeing that the bivalves, which are clams and oysters and scallops and mussels, as well as the shellfish like crabs and lobster, that those types of seafood are now invaded with BMAA, which is a toxin that was never before in the in the natural waterways and in these foods as much. And we, in the United States, we see clusters of ALS and PDS, Parkinson's dementia syndrome, around Chesapeake Bay, and people who live near inland lakes and eat fish from inland lakes where they have agricultural runoff and more algae overgrowth in the lakes too. And now I used to think that it was okay for me to sometimes have sardines or a little bit small fish. But now we know that the microplastic is heavily coated in the digestive tract of the fish. And when you eat a smaller fish, like a sardine, you pop the whole digestive tract in your mouth with the fish. You don't skin and take the digestive tract out of the fish. So it's more toxic, not less toxic. The smaller fish used to be less toxic, now have more plastic exposure, and the plastics are more endocrine disruptive. So even though an occasional seafood might have been advised in the past, I no longer advise that. I'd rather, but my almost 40 years of practice have noted that in vegan populations, and people who are very healthy vegans eating, fruits, healthy food, fruits and vegetables, beans and nuts, still developed Parkinson's and dementia in their later lives, which correlated with very extreme levels of the omega-3 index being very low. And subsequent studies have corroborated that evidence that low omega-3 index is linked to brain shrinkage and cognitive impairment in later life. And that we also have more data now from the Seventh-day Adventist 2 studies to show that there's more dementia in vegans compared to non-vegans. Now, that doesn't even matter. Even if there was more dementia in non-vegans, the non-vegans get dementia from all the, pizza and junk food and lack of antioxidants and saturated fat. They have a different cause of dementia. So it doesn't matter whether there's more or less. The fact that there's any dementia in a healthy eating vegan is enough for us to not want to have that to happen if we can prevent it. And we can prevent it because the healthy diet prevents dementia, but you also have to have a relatively normal omega-3 index at the same time. So through my career, I developed and started obtaining a vegan form of EPA and DHA that we keep in dark glass bottles. We store it in the warehouse in big refrigerators, so we maintain its freshness, so people have a fresh source of EPA and DHA. Because my concern with commercial fish oils and commercial vegan supplements is that they're at room temperature for 6 months, 12 months, 14 months, and degree of rancidity sets in with long periods of time outside of being refrigerated.
That's true. That's true.
Now, the other issue here, so I do recommend those, the smart use of the judicious use of supplements to make sure we have adequate B12, adequate zinc, and adequate DHA and EPA. And those are the nutrients you would have gotten from that small amount from the seafood that we're not eating. So yeah. I'm making sure we're not low on anything. At the same time, we're recognizing that some basic supplemental ingredients like folic acid and vitamin A promote cancer. And I'm saying that one contributor to the explosion of childhood cancer is giving women taking folic acid during their pregnancy for a few reasons. Number one, folic acid is a synthetic toxic substance. It's not the same thing as real folate you get from food.
Yeah.
Number two, people eat vegetables for folate, are getting tons of folate with 1,000 other nutrients that are important for good health. If you're low in folate, you're not just low in folate. You're low in other phytochemicals too that you would have gotten had you eaten green vegetables for folate. There's a link between the lack of green vegetables in the diet in the mother and their risk of autoimmune conditions, autism, mental illness, brain tumors, and childhood cancer in the offspring, as well as a link between eating luncheon meats like hot dogs and bacon and pastrami and bologna and sausage and brain tumors and cancer in their child as well, and brain tumors in their child as well. But just focusing on the folic acid issue here, that's an opportunity for public health authorities to tell people to eat green vegetables. And the promotion of eating green vegetables would have lowered the risk of childhood and would have helped to have healthy child with less deformities. But now we turn everything into a pill. So we take a synthetic pill called folic acid, and now women don't have to think about eating sufficient green vegetables. They can just take a pill. It's the same thing they did with the blood pressure or the diabetes or the cholesterol. You don't have to worry about what you eat, just take a pill. We turn everything into a pill solution, which doesn't really solve the problem. It just changes the problem. And sometimes it changes the problem into a worse problem. because we're not getting to the real cause. The real cause of the neural tube defects in the baby wasn't the lack of folic acid. It's the lack of folate from vegetables. Women should be advised to eat green vegetables and beans to not have neural tube defects and heart defects. The substitution of folic acid in place of green vegetables doesn't work. It lowers neural tube defects, but then you have more heart defects, more childhood cancers, more childhood immune disease, more childhood autism, It just led to a whole constellation of worse damage to children. While you try, so the overly simplistic thinking of having a pill that can solve all our problems does not work.
Yeah, I agree with that. So before we get into talking about you mentioned cancer, I like to get actually into that, but especially because now it's October and it's the green, pink, or whatever, the pink month for breast cancer. So it's a good time to talk about it. But I wanted to ask your opinion on some influencers that are online. I don't like to call out names, but I'm going to mention her because she's very popular. It's the glucose goddess. And she talks about the pairing of food starting with, I think, protein and fats, and then basically gives the license to people to have whatever they want, including French pastries, like pain au chocolat, for example, and be okay because their blood sugar is more stable than it would have been if they started with that, the pain au chocolat over the croissant. And that to me just doesn't make sense. I mean, this obsession with keeping blood sugar so flat without really thinking about, okay, but what are we eating? Because I mean, I think we got to a point where people are so obsessed with these spikes that we forget that that's a normal response, a metabolic response to eating food, and that we need to see the glucose go up, and then the body does what it needs to do, and it will slowly bring it down, and within 2 hours you'll be back to normal if you don't have any metabolic issue. But we become obsessed, like everybody's putting a CGM on, they're obsessed with what they have. And then you have influencers, they're like, don't worry, you can just add your protein, have your meat before your croissant, and everything will be fine. So what are the actual, I mean, anything can be proven in an angle, all right? So what are the actual facts around this approach long term?
Well, let's talk about those two things. One is that obviously this is dangerous advice, and it's also illogical and not scientific. But people are, they're easily scammed, and they don't have much nutritional knowledge, and the superficial knowledge they have enables them to be tricked into wanting to think it's okay to consume the foods they like without having any consequence to it. And it's magic. There's no magic. There's the immutable biological laws of cause and effect. And you can't make yourself get healthy if you're putting unhealthy food into your body. You can't make cigarettes okay because they're organic. You can't make salt okay because it's Himalayan salt or Celtic salt with some minerals in it. And you can't so it's just nonsensical. But today we have a dozen studies looking at long-term people following diets with different types and amounts of protein. And these people are now followed for 20 or 30 years. And the thousands of researchers that have investigated these individuals, and we're talking about a dozen separate studies, each study having more than 100,000 people, and each study having a team of like 15 or 20 researchers investigating the people's outcomes, looking at hard endpoints like what they die of and how long did they live. And what these investigators found is that the more animal protein they consume, the shorter their lifespan in a dose-dependent manner. And the corroborative evidence from all these studies is amazing. What I'm saying right now is that each study done by different researchers in different parts of the world and different populations showed the exact same thing, that animal protein dials up a shorter lifespan. And the shortest lifespan of all the people tested were those people on keto and carnivore diets who are restricting carbohydrates so severely to go into ketosis, with the most early life deaths. Early life death is not defined as a death before the age of 70. The most early life deaths occurred for people with the highest levels of animal protein with the lowest blood glucoses, right? Looking to control their blood glucoses through restriction of fruit and carbohydrates from vegetables. Shortest lifespan. And the longest lifespan of the individuals were those that had the most plant-derived proteins. And the foods with the highest, the plant foods with the most proteins are beans, nuts and seeds, and green vegetables. And now we have probably 1,000 studies correlating greens, nuts and seeds, and green vegetables with extension of human lifespan, reduction of cancer, and slowing of the aging process. They're high protein foods, but they don't push your protein to the excessive amounts in the biological concentration to lead to a level of hormones that promote cellular replication and a cancer growth. But so these people who you're talking about, and I don't know this person you mentioned. I never heard of her. I don't know what she says or does. No idea. But if you're using meat to keep your sugar down, because meat is not high, has no carbohydrate, then you're taking in saturated fat. And saturated fat distorts the shape and function of the insulin receptor. So now when you eat a mango, because your diet's high in saturated fat, you'll have a high glucose response. So the person on a keto or meat-based diet says, look, I can't eat the sweet potato. I can't have the oatmeal and the mango because my sugar goes through the roof. I have to stick with just eating the meat, the tuna fish, and maybe some vegetables, maybe some, green, whatever. So they become more sensitively glycemically, they become more glycemically unfavorable if they eat higher, if they have sugar. So they're having the meat before the croissant doesn't give you a better sugar outcome, because in the long run now, you are chronically damaging your insulin receptors. And as you stay with that diet and keep eating fat, every week that you're on that diet, your insulin receptors will get worse, and your response to a glycemic load or a carbohydrate will be more impaired. Long term, your insulin sensitivity, which we want insulin sensitivity, we want to be sensitive to the sugar in our blood. So we produce a little amount of insulin and it gets it out of the blood. Just a little insulin gets it out of the blood because the insulin receptors are working. That's the hallmark of a healthy centenarian. A person who lives to be 100 years old, they all are insulin sensitive. They all don't need much insulin production because their insulin receptors are working. And you keep these insulin receptors working by two things: low body fat and low bloodstream fat. The caloric rush after the meal has to not throw fat into the bloodstream. If you throw too much fat into the bloodstream, you're going to inactivate the uptake of the function of the insulin receptor. That's why when people eat nuts and seeds as a source of fat, instead of oil, it doesn't throw fat into the bloodstream, because nuts and seeds are digested so slowly and the fat goes like at 1 or 2 calories a minute, so the body can preferentially burn it for energy, not store it as fat. When you throw 40 calories of blood into the bloodstream, the body can't burn it as fat. It can't burn it. It has to store it. And in the storing process, in the circulation of all that fat in the blood, it impairs the function of the insulin receptors, and you have a worse response to carbohydrates. Excuse me, I was getting over a cold and I'm still having like a little bit mucus, so some of my voice starts to cough, Excuse me. But the point is that when a person eats a Nutritarian diet, like I recommend, with vegetables and salad and vegetable bean soups and cooked greens and all the nuts and fruit too, their diabetes disappears in the first month. Meaning they don't need insulin anymore. They don't need diabetic medications. Their sugars go down. The diabetes goes away. And they gradually lose weight. And they're losing weight by at least 2 pounds a week or 1 kilogram a week. If they're overweight and not losing weight by 1 kilogram a week, then they're not going to restore the function of their insulin receptor. Because there's no such thing as a healthy overweight person. And there's no such thing as an overweight person with a healthy insulin response. All overweight people are pre-diabetic, because all overweight people need to produce excess amount of insulin to keep their sugars in the normal range. So if your sugars are in the normal range and you're producing extra insulin to keep in the normal range, you're still in bad shape, because the extra insulin drives cell replication. It's a fat storage hormone and can drive cancer initiation. and it's pro-angiogenesis. It allows cancer cells to grow, replicate, and glean a blood supply. So these people on these so-called diets by this influencer who think they're okay, even if their sugar looks normal in their blood, they're not normal, because the sugar's normal because at the expense of promoting cancer. The sugar, so they promoted cancer with the high protein, the saturated fat disorder, the insulin receptor. The pancreas now can produce more insulin to keep the sugar looking okay, but now they sacrificed, obviously, many years of life to achieve that.
Yeah.
So it's a shame that these people, that there's such dangerous people giving advice on the internet, but, you know, luckily we have the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. We have thousands of nutritional researchers and scientists around the world. And we have a huge amount of corroborative and informative information that people can delve into. And in my books, what I do is like in my book, Eat for Life, I might have 2,000 scientific references in there that you can look up the references and you can see what they say. And you can see if what's in the reference and if the science actually is truly agreeing with what's said in the page of the book. Because a lot of people are just trying to trick people into thinking it's okay to hurt them, to keep eating unhealthily, just to sell people what they want to hear.
Yeah. And I guess sometimes when you go on a diet because you lose weight, you think that's the hallmark of you being on a health journey. But, you know, over time, again, the nutrients are very important, the way that our body works out, just the way that the body detoxes and the way that the body cleanses. And I guess we get lost a little bit into just the weight sometimes, and we have to really just think about long-term, the whole picture, right? So I was saying at the beginning, like when it comes to health, what is how do we mark when we're getting healthier? Like what are we looking at when we want to prevent disease, for example, aside from weight?
Well, scientifically, your lifespan and your resistance to cancer is dependent on the cellular concentration of nutrients, particularly phytochemicals and antioxidants. What's the quantity and diversity of phytochemicals and antioxidants in each cell? So is your cell well nourished? And what's the level of toxicity in that cell of toxins, advanced glycation end products, reactive oxygen species, ammonia, uric acid, urea, formaldehyde? Your body produces toxins. And we're exposed to toxins from the external world too. And it gets mixed up in there. And as you get low nutrient exposure, and don't forget the nutrients I'm talking about that are so essential here are found in colorful plants. You don't get phytochemicals and antioxidants in processed foods. You don't get it in animal products. I'm saying a piece of chicken is like a bagel. They both are nutrient deficient. They don't contain phytochemicals and antioxidants. We have to eat the greens and the onions and the mushrooms and the berries and the seeds and the tomatoes, and we have to eat the colorful food. So we're talking here about body fat being low while phytochemical concentration goes up. And as body fat goes lower, we actually store the phytochemicals in a smaller mass of the human body, which increases the concentration of phytochemicals in our cells in a smaller body. But so we can know that the person's achieving better health because they're losing weight and their phytochemical concentration is enhanced. We can measure that. There's like a phytocytonic scanner, it's like it measures skin carotenoid score. You put your hand into it with a laser now. It measures the colors in your skin, which correlates pretty well with your level of vegetable intake and your phytochemical level in the cells in your body. And we see that as people eat healthfully, it takes about 3 to 6 to 9 months for the level of a person eating a more standard diet to start to get the levels of nutrients in their tissues high enough that we have in us Nutritarians, like a 90 or 100,000. They come in with like 20 to 30,000. And with the low 30,000, they usually have headaches and they have brain fog. And they don't feel well and they're fatigued all the time. And they're feeling better, but their level of nutrients get measurably higher as they eat healthier long term and simultaneously lose weight. Now, if you lose weight by eating animal products, number one, you're not going to lose that much weight. You're still going to stay thicker in the midsection. But two, you're not going to see the phytochemical concentration of tissues increase. you're still going to be chronically deficient in phytochemicals, laying yourself open to cancer, which is obviously not the consequence of aging. And we know that these vegetable compounds found in green vegetables, onions, and mushrooms, gene silence. Scientists call this gene silencing, that people with abnormal genes, those genes do not get expressed, do not cause cancer, because the person consumed enough healthy food like vegetables, onions, and mushrooms.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
nutritional science has advanced so far today. We can give people the power to control their health destiny, to make a decision that they don't want to get cancer like breast cancer. They don't have to. And you're not going to prevent it from getting mammograms and getting more chemo and having your breast cut off. You're going to get it following a Nutritarian diet, which is scientifically designed to include the full portfolio of foods that work synergistically to prevent the body from getting cancer.
The G bombs, right?
Right, G bombs, right.
Yeah. And okay, thank you for explaining that. It's really good way to put it and understand it. Let's talk about cancer, because I have a lot of my clients who I was very surprised, but because I work with women and especially on hormones, and I basically work on balancing them on a plant-based diet, whole food plant-based diet. And a lot of the concepts are very much from you on the Nutritarian aspects of it. But I am sometimes a little bit speechless because, of course, they get my advice and then they go to their doctor. And if there is a little something that is worrisome, they're always pushed. And I had 2 clients doing that, to remove organs, even if there isn't a cancer that is spread everywhere. Like maybe there's a cyst, and instead of just removing the cyst, they started blasting the whole area, doing hysterectomies, or just really removing breast tissues if it was in the breast. I mean, I had a client who, because she had the BRCA2 gene, the doctor just basically did a full removal of breast tissue and her reproductive system. She was already in menopause, but of course, this still has a massive impact on the person. And I just feel like, where is our middle way to deal with this? Like when we get information about, okay, you have the BRCA2 genes, and we know that epigenetic is very, very important. You just mentioned it. You can switch your genes on and off depending on your lifestyle and diet. How do we navigate when a doctor is trying to just say the solution is to remove these organs, rather than, hey, actually look after yourself, eat a better diet, or go on a strict diet that is just about nutrients and really getting healthy, rather than, oh, well, the only thing you can do is remove your uterus and your breasts. I just feel like it's so extreme, right?
Well, all you could do is give the best advice that having goodwill for that person. But we can't control what other people say, and we can't control the decision the person makes either. We just have to feel good about ourselves and doing the best job we can do. We give it our best shot, and we can't get too emotionally upset if the person doesn't listen to us. Our egos can't be involved, and we know that what we do is not mainstream or culturally indigenous to the Western population. The things I'm saying are radical by conventional standards. Even though I'm correct, even though I'm giving people better advice, most people don't follow my advice, even who heard it in depth. They're still most people here are going to say, it sounds good, it sounds scientific, but I can't do that. I can't eat that way. I still want my bagels and my French fries and my hot dogs, and I need those foods because I go out with my work. The brain will come up with all these excuses, because inherently, this addicted human who's addicted to self-destructive food and dangerous food, their whole self doesn't want to give it up. Part of themselves are anxiously objecting to giving up these foods. And they're looking for an excuse. The brain is seeking for a rationalization why it doesn't have to listen to you or me. And they'll say, so the brain is not in this person's, the brain is not all on your best interest. It's like this alien with a mind of its own trying to justify your self-destructive habits. And if a doctor can tell you it doesn't matter what you eat, you got to get your breath, and that's not going to matter. You can't protect yourself with food. You got to have your breast cut off or your ovaries taken out. they're going to jump onto that advice because deep down, they don't want to give up their meat and cheeseburgers, whatever it is. Deep down, they'd like to. They'd rather have their, and many people, as you know, would rather have their chest cut open and have bypass surgery than improve their diet. Many people would rather take drugs that cause cancer rather than eat healthy and lose weight. They would rather have their stomach surgery. They'd rather take drugs and have surgery instead of living healthfully and removing the cause of disease and allowing the body to naturally heal itself. People can naturally lose weight and get healthy, but why are the biggest and hottest things, and these things like Ozempic, these GTPL inhibitors, they want a pill to take. They don't want to have to be told to eat healthy. They don't want to think to eat healthy. They want to be able to have their cake and eat it too and still lose weight.
Yeah.
Right? So don't be too discouraged, because it's always going to be a percentage of people that don't follow the advice that you or I give them, and that's okay. We still do the best. We still want to do and when I wrote Eat to Live back in 2022, it was published in 2004. The publisher said to me, "You could make some tweaks in this book a little more, and it would make it into like a really great, a much more powerful bestseller." And I said, "I'm not caring about a bestseller. Best-selling books are usually junk. I wanted to help people who need help." It became a bestseller because of over time, mostly because I got exposed on television, and I got some good publicity, and so many people got results. It became a bestseller, years later. But it wasn't my purpose to write a book to be a bestseller. I'm not writing a book to sell the most books. I'm writing a book not to sell out those individuals who want to know what's very best to do to maximize their health, longevity, and to maximally prevent themselves from having cancer or a heart attack or a stroke. And because if I sell it out to make it more palatable to the population, maybe some people are going to die or going to suffer that they didn't need to because they didn't get the full, the story straight.
Yeah. So
we
let's talk to those people. Let's talk to those people.
We give the story straight, and our niche is for the people who want to do what's best. Yeah. And if other people aren't going to do it or listen, that's okay. You still got to give people the best information you can.
That's true. So let's talk to those people that are not going to have a mastectomy and hysterectomy. Thank you. What can they do to prevent, or in the very unlucky situation of getting cancer, to help their body heal from it?
Well, the main take-home message here, the main message is that the same dietary portfolio of foods that protects against common cancers is also been shown to be therapeutically effective to prevent recurrence and enhance lifespan in people who have a diagnosis of cancer. So luckily, it's not a different program when you get cancer. It's the same program to prevent cancer as it is to live longer when you have cancer. And we have lots of studies that document the efficacy of this. For example, there was a study that tracked women who has breast cancer for 10 years, and those women who ate lignans from flax seeds, it was just 1/3 of a milligram of lignin, had a 71% decreased risk of dying over that 10-year period, compared to women not having lignans in their diet. And of course, you don't wait till a person gets cancer to have them live the right lifestyle. It's going to be more effective had they done it before, way earlier. But even when they waited that long, it still has beneficial effects. But it's not just flax seeds or lignans. It's the full compilation of these thousands of nutrients we put together, that each one of these individual substances and nutrients themselves have been shown to have powerful protective effects. But when you put together a dietary portfolio that includes all these foods simultaneously, then the magic happens, and we get dramatic protection against cancer and even those people who have cancer. And that's why I add the juices. I have been drinking juicing once or twice a day. The reason is because their appetite might be low, and they're not going to eat as many vegetables enough to take the time. Because remember I said earlier in this conversation, I said it could take 6 to 9 months to bring the level of nutrients in their tissues to the concentration we consider healthy. Now, by adding the juicing in the first 6 months, I can bring the concentration of nutrients in the tissues higher sooner to enhance the natural protection against cancer, and not let 6 months go by while the body is still nutritionally deficient. And the juice is a 3-part juice that includes 1/3 cruciferous like bok choy, 1/3 carrot and beet, and 1/3 usually lettuce. So it mixes these nutrients that doesn't take up so much fiber and appetite space in their stomach, so they still have room to eat the meal, but it enhanced the amount of vegetables they could consume without feeling too full, or without feeling they're stuffed, by adding the juice to their normal meals. So now they're still losing weight, but they're taking more nutrients in, and they're increasing the nutrient density of tissues. And I have so many examples of people with cancers that were advanced with poor prognosis that are now living 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years later without cancer. One woman, for example, and had a metastatic ovarian cancer with 4 liters of fluid extracted from her lung, given 6 months to live, and she was she was in bad shape, and she did receive chemo, but chemo doesn't kill all the cancer. It leaves some stray cells that escape the cancer, and those stray cells grow back in 3 or 4 years, 5 years, and the person dies of the cancer from the cells that came back, which were resistant to chemo the first time, and they're going to be hard to be killed the second time. So these people usually die in some years ahead, even if they have chemo. And now she's alive now 28 years later. That was 1997, so that's 13 years plus 23 years. Yeah, 24 years. So that's 37 years later. No, it's 27 years later.
Yeah.
27 years later, right. Alive 27. Think about how many. So that's not the only case of ovarian cancer that's arrived 2 decades later. I have other cases with ovarian cancer, metastatic disease. Karen and I get a lot of people, And then we have people with breast cancer who are metastasized and given, and likewise the same thing. Either the breast cancer is an aggressive early breast cancer where the chemo would be important, or it was a later breast cancer, postmenopausal, garden variety breast cancer, estrogen positive, where chemo is not going to work because it's a slow-growing cancer. So the person refuses chemo, and they're still going to be okay because they had the mass removed, but the stray cells that may have escaped the initial mass can be sought out and attacked by a healthy immune system and destroyed before they can coalesce and cause a cancer. And you're inhibiting metastasize and tumor growth and replication because your diet is so idealized. So yes, I'm saying wherever you are in life, this is a very effective approach to improve your health and to prolong human lifespan. And I think that people underestimate the power of nutritional science and nutritional excellence and how therapeutically effective it can be, not just to prevent disease, but actually reverse disease that could be present, that could be there, that was activated by poor health habits.
Yeah.
So it's amazing what I've seen and what could be done to the body when they do this with a high degree of excellence.
Yeah. And the same approach would work even for cardiovascular disease, right?
Oh, yes. Much easier and predictable results with cardiovascular disease.
Mm.
And the same thing with cardiovascular disease. They go to the doctor, and the doctor puts in a stent or does bypass surgery or gives them medication.
Yeah.
Which then makes the person think they can just live, so it's all just the same stuff all over again.
Yes, it is.
And people could be angry at me and think I'm a board certified family physician. I took all the board tests. I've worked in emergency rooms. I've done, so I'm not anti everything doctors do, but I'm very critical of the way medicine is commonly practiced. And I'm critical of it because lifestyle and nutritional excellence gives better outcomes than just prescribing drugs while a person doesn't make any changes. So ultimately, my job has become as an educator and motivator to get people to make the changes necessary to allow the body to naturally heal itself. And I'm saying whether you go to a naturopath or an osteopath or a medical doctor or an herbalist or an oriental doctor or an Ayurvedic doctor, they're all looking for remedies to give you to get well. And remedies don't make you well. You want to live in a manner to avoid the need for remedies of any type. I can give you a natural substance derived from an herb to make your headaches go away, or to make you urinate more or urinate less, to make your heart beat faster, make your heart beat slower, lower your blood pressure, take away your pain. But the efficacy is proportional to its toxicity. It's not good for you to take natural substances to change the expression of diseases. It's better for you not to have disease. I'm saying let's live in a manner to avoid the need for medicinal substances so you don't need doctoring of any type.
Yeah, empower yourself with education. I'm learning naturopath. I've done the course with Dr. Robert Morse. I don't know if you know him. One thing I like about him, he works with
alkaline
herbs.
guy?
Not necessarily. Like, yes, he was more into that now, but yeah, he does talk about acidity versus alkaline. But the approach that he does is not very dissimilar to yours, except that he obviously, when he's working with the regenerative issues of the nervous system, he does focus mostly on fruit, which I know is very extreme. But I understand his view. I mean, I don't necessarily would follow that approach for me. But I do like the way that he works with herbs, for example. Like, the herbs are never to fix an ailment, but rather to support the organs in the body to do their job. But still,
Bullshit.
really,
It's
I
all
really. But
why would you think you need something? That's ridiculous. It's just utterly ridiculous.
okay, give me your opinion as to why.
I did already.
Well, you
so
said
why-
bullshit. Yes.
Yeah.
Why
Yeah,
do you
because-
think the herbs don't support different organs?
Because the organs have nutritive needs,
Mm.
right? They don't have needs for poison. Natural substances that grow supply us with both poisonous and nutritive substances.
But the amounts are important, right?
Yes. So there's always some poisonous substances, but when there's low amount of poisonous substances then they're called a food. And when there's high amount of poisonous substances, they can be used as a drug, because it's the poisonous part of the plant that can suppress a symptom. But there's nothing about strengthening or supporting organs. That's hocus pocus nonsense. It's either nutritive or it's poisonous. There's no support. If it's not poisonous, it's nutrients. And the nutrient foods, there's no herbs there are herbs and spices that have nutrients in them, but they have no medicinal effects. They're things like parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme, and green tea extracts. But those have the substances that food has. So broccoli sprouts, turmeric, there are some herbs that have important nutritive substances that improve immunity. But the minute you're starting to treat people with medicinal herbs, then you're putting poisons in the body that are going to have therapeutic effects. And the therapeutic effects are proportional to the efficacy of the substance is proportional to its toxicity. If it does something to make you feel better, it's bad for you. If you took broccoli, you don't feel better, you feel nothing. You get better, which takes time. So there's no herbal remedy that has effects to support the body. It's either a plant that has nutrients in it, or it's a plant that's therapeutic and as a drug. It's not supporting anything. There's
So
no
you
such
don't
thing as
believe? So
supporting.
you're not a fan of herbalism, basically. That's what I'm getting.
Well, number one, homeopathy is also just a placebo. But since most herbs are probably less toxic than synthetic drugs, it may be, compared to a person taking drugs, it may be somewhat not as bad. But there's no need for the herbal There's no need for the herbal medications for lowering blood pressure, or taking away headaches, or making a person, giving them more energy, or detoxifying the liver. There's no need for those things, because the healthy diet works better. The herb doesn't add anything to it. The herb adds more toxic waste for the body to deal with. There's nothing we need from an herbalist.
I understand what you're saying, but I also, having done the course, those things never replace the diet. Never replace you eating whole food, vegetables.
You gotta have
Okay, I
something
don't
that
agree.
you can
I don't
tell the
agree.
person to make a little extra money, maybe. I don't know, but I don't.
I don't know. I don't agree with Dr.
Would
Moss
there ever
about,
be a
not
case-
having. Yeah, sorry.
Would there ever be a case
Hmm.
that a diabetic eating ideally would get better faster or better outcome with herbs compared to just the diet? Is there ever a case where the cancer would do better, where the heart disease would reverse faster, where the osteoarthritis would improve, or the rheumatoid? No. The only advantage of the herb is with the nutritive herbs, like turmeric and cumin and EGCG from green tea. Yes, from parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme, and moringa. And there are herbs and basil, and there are natural herbs that have nutrients. They're nutritive herbs.
Yeah.
But they're not medicinal herbs. They're nutritive herbs. If the medicinal herbs pulled off the cabinet by the Chinese herbalist to have medicinal effects in your body, then you're not taking a nutritive herb, you're taking a toxic herb that has pharmacologic effects, and you're better off not taking it.
Okay. It's an interesting approach. I think like with everything, we shouldn't take it all the time, but I have seen people that maybe if they do the diet and they take a 2 weeks protocol like milk thistle, their liver does feel better and they then continue with the diet. And I haven't seen any side effect from it.
Okay.
Maybe it's placebo. Maybe it's placebo.
That's not what you're saying is not factual. Let me explain.
Yeah.
In order to determine if that was true, you would have to have a large number of people, probably at least 50 people in two groups. One group taking milk thistle with that degree of liver malfunction. And by the way, the liver doesn't feel better. You don't feel your liver, your pancreas, your kidney. Disease doesn't cause pain. So that feeling better.
I know, feel better, like more energy, not in terms of the liver.
That's still irrelevant. That's still completely irrelevant. It doesn't correlate with getting better. Feeling better does not correlate with getting better. Matter of fact, you could feel worse as you're getting better faster, because more detoxing faster.
Yeah, we talked about that. Yeah, of course.
That's incorrect. But to document that, it's easy to document. And people who sell milk thistle and claim that have tried to document that by giving people with liver problems milk thistle and following them. And I'm saying if they followed a healthy diet or a healthy diet with milk thistle, you would not see any increased degree of wellness or faster degree of recovery with the milk thistle compared to a healthy diet without. So you could produce a study to evaluate that.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that the studies we've done so far do not corroborate that or show that to be true.
Okay.
And I would bet $1 million that if you did such a study and did it with a good design, it would show zero benefit.
Okay.
You don't need milk thistle when you're already eating the arugula and the broccoli sprouts.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Scallions and the mushrooms. You don't need to throw the milk thistle on top of it. You're getting enough chemicals without it.
Okay. I'm very open to, for me, the main thing is the food. So, but maybe maybe.
Here's the sentence. It's called, "It's the food, stupid." That's it's the food, stupid. Right? People don't want to believe it's the food.
Yeah.
They want something else. And they want something else so they don't have to eat the healthy food or change their diet.
Yeah.
And the doctor, and some of these doctors, not to mention this doctor, but doctors always have some side scam where they can make money doing this, like the guy from America who tells everybody beans are bad for you. The lectins in beans are dangerous. He spends like $10 million a month on advertising. He makes like $8 million a month selling this lectin substance, these lectin-fighting supplements that enable the lectins that he made people so afraid of now can be defended against with these anti-lectin pills he's going to give you to take. So there's one guy with no science to back his viewpoints, because lectins are burned off when you cook them with beans, obviously.
Yeah.
And they're good when you cook bean lectins. They become very good for you and very anti-cancer. But so he invented all this stuff and he created a whole following because he made it into a big business. But you don't see a lot of doctors promoting it. It's just that one guy promoting this to make money. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of, so that's the concern, is that you have the medical profession promoting drugs. And then you have the natural alternative functional medicine, integrative doctors promoting some remedies, and naturopaths promoting some other remedies people can buy. And it leaves the lifestyle physicians and the real Nutritarians and us natural hygienists, come from that background, in a really minority, because people always want some kind of thing they could buy or some kind of thing they can trick the body into without, they don't have to eat healthfully. And I'm just saying, no, there's no remedies, there's no magic, just live healthfully. That's the main thing. And don't be deficient in anything. And the only thing, on a plant-based diet, there are only 3 things you're really low in, and that's zinc, B12, and EPA DHA. If you're supplementing intelligently and moderately with those 3 things, then you're better off going to as much natural plants as possible.
How do you feel about iodine?
Well, the RDI for iodine is 150 micrograms a day, which is about right. It's about what people need. People who are not salting their food should have some exposure to iodine. And food gives us some, but and you can get kelp and seaweed. But I have 150 micrograms of iodine in the supplement that I recommend to people.
Okay,
I
so
have
you
a
also
complete-
supplement that.
Yeah, we have it in there just because you don't have to. You could take a little kelp or a little bit of something, sprinkle on your food. But
Yeah.
I'm not paying attention to eating any seaweed or kelp containing food, so I just have it in my supplement just in case. So you're right, iodine might be a fourth something to at least be aware of. But too much iodine suppresses thyroid function, and too
Yes.
little iodine suppresses thyroid function. So we don't want to take too much iodine, just that sweet spot, that just a little bit every day.
Yeah. What's become quite popular now is CMOS. How do you feel about it?
I don't know that much about it, but if I looked into it, my questions would also be on the cleanliness, the water it was grown in. It would always be, on how pure is it and how lack of contaminations and things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not that I think I have to eat sea moss. There's plenty of other things we can eat that would,
Yeah. And in terms of, I have one question though. You mentioned the hygienist movement. So, and this is a pure question out of maybe confusion because a lot of naturopathic doctors also say that they are hygienists. So they look at nutrition, and then they also use herbs, right? Because in naturopathy, there is like a scope, like you look at different practices that you can add on to the nutrition and lifestyle. Originally, in the hygienist movement, were herbs included, or they were never included and they came out later? Like Dr. Sheldon, did he include herbs?
No, of course not.
Okay.
And you know what it is that my daughter just graduated from naturopathic school.
Yeah.
And I sat there for the last 4 years watching what she learned.
Yeah.
And they are so far away from, I'm really the naturopath. I'm much more of a naturalist than these people graduating from naturopathic school.
Yeah.
They don't learn that they didn't learn about how inflammation walls off and removes toxic agents. We look up inflammation. I've learned more about, what I'm saying right now is they're still very empirical and disease oriented and treatment oriented with drugs and with natural products. Yes.
Yeah.
But they know nothing. They've learned nothing about establishing the optimal environment for healing and the respect of the human body to heal itself. They give it some talk. They give it some kind of like philosophical jargon, but they don't. But everything they're doing is treating people with substances and treatments.
Yeah.
So I was very disappointed at the lack of nutrition and the lack of understanding the way the body works.
Yeah.
What I'm saying right now is that the inflammatory response is intertwined with the process of repair, and to silence that with drugs or with therapies could make the person worse. We want to have it complete. But in any case, yes, I think that the naturopaths are not as natural and naturopathic as they should be.
Okay, so it's changed a little bit.
I'm the most naturopathic. I'm the medical doctor, and I'm more naturopathic than these naturopaths are.
Well, I always thought that you did study, you became an MD, but I always thought because coming from the hygienist background, you actually were a naturopathic doctor. But I think
No,
you
I'm
are.
not a naturopathic doctor at all.
Yeah.
I'm a person who's a naturalist
Yeah.
and who studies science, and I'm saying that the science supports what I'm talking about here and being more of a naturalist. The science supports leaving the body alone, establish an optimal environment for healing, stop putting poisons in it, and establish the right nutrients and allow the body to heal itself. That's what the science supports.
Yeah.
So I'm a knowledgeable and informed nutritional scientist. And because of that, it's made me become such a naturalist. And plus, I do have the basic philosophical knowledge of natural hygiene, but I didn't utilize natural hygiene. I rejected a lot of it based on what science showed was false.
Okay.
You know?
Give me some
A lot of
examples.
A lot of Dr. Shelton's viewpoints were not true, but But science has shown some of these things to be wrong.
Yeah. Can we highlight some of them? Because again, a lot of, we do courses and we learn, and there are some things that are conflicting. I mean, we're trying to navigate a lot of information. Again, as I said, food for me is the primary thing and will always be, because I've seen it heal me from type 2 diabetes, adrenal fatigue. I mean, I was a mess, and I did it just with food, actually, nothing else but food. But we get a lot of different information, and the hygienist movement comes up when we're doing studies in naturopathy. So I'd like to know, what are the main things that Dr. Sheldon was showing that came out actually not to be accurate scientifically, and that maybe we should just pay attention not to following?
The main thing is food combining, number one, right?
Okay.
Because, not to eat fruit with, not to eat starchy vegetables with not, that's one thing. It's important for people to eat lower amounts of food, yes, but combining foods, the stomach is not alkaline when you eat fruit and acidic when you eat protein. It's always acidic. So there's some error. Okay. The second thing is, he didn't believe in contagion, that viruses or bacteria existed. He didn't think syphilis and those things, polio, he didn't think that was real. So there are some things he did not adequately respect or understand the nature of infectious disease. So even though we're talking about improving the immune system so our body's resistant to infection, we still can recognize that infection is real, and a person has pneumonia, they could die if you don't give them an antibiotic, and meningitis can be life-saving. So we still, as a medical doctor, respect that some of the things Dr. Shelton taught could potentially have damaged and hurt people.
Yes.
And I did have people in my practice come to me and die of pneumonia. They died because they came to me and refused to take it before they wouldn't take a pill because Shelton said not to. Or they took one guy came into me, I said, "Why did you come into me on your practically in your deathbed? Why didn't you get here sooner?" I sent him right over to the emergency room with advanced pneumonia, and they gave him drugs in the emergency room, and he still died in the emergency room because it was too late. He got there too late,
Yeah.
And that was his natural hygiene background that made him think that he shouldn't have evaluated the lack of being able to breathe. 103 fever, and he couldn't breathe, and he didn't believe. So what I'm saying is that the sphere of pills but went over to even the field of letting an infection kill you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I had one woman who was a hygienist who had, and by the way, like T.C. Fry died of B12 deficiency as a hygienist because Shelton and them didn't take B12. And when you take B12, it can elevate homocysteine. And so I had one woman who flew in to see me from Sweden, and she was one of Dr. Shelton's, firm, disciples. So she had advanced heart disease. I tested her and found her to be dangerously B12 deficient as the cause of her disease. And she said, Shelton doesn't agree with you. And she didn't take B12, and she died of heart disease due to listening to him. So there are some, obviously, things that could be too extreme there,
Yeah. That's why we need to keep up with education and also look at science. I think it's a good balance,
Right.
But we don't all do it, I guess.
Yep.
Dr. Ferman, what are we're going to close with this because I know we went a little over time, but what are the things that you have changed your view on in the last, say, 10 years? Give me the top 3 that people can look into and they should do differently now so that they can be healthier and prevent disease.
Well, number one, I've unfortunately don't recommend people. I pressure people more to make more full change and not to baby step their way in or to think they can be okay doing it 90% because very often it defeats. They don't see the benefits. Number one, that I've changed a lot. Number two, I've increased the level of what I think is the maximal beneficial omega-3 index. I used to tell people to be above 4 on the omega-3 index, but now I'm telling people to be above 6.
Okay.
To protect their brain health, because we're going to live so long eating this way, or live longer, we want to have a full-size brain. And having omega-3, supplement to your omega-3 index is above 6. That's a separate change. And maybe, what would be a third thing? Maybe a third thing is, as we age, watch that you don't eat too much fruit as we age. Because out of the 5 plant foods, fruits, vegetables, beans, nuts, and seeds, and whole grains, fruit has the lowest protein. And if you put too much fruit in your diet, you might be having borderline, diet could be too low in protein. But if you have, 3 to 6 fruits a day and you're having enough of the other foods, you're getting enough protein. So the other thing is don't make your diet fruit predominant. You could eat a couple because the fruit predominant diet may have been okay for you when you were young, but as you age and the ability to assimilate protein goes down, you're better off with paying attention to eating more of the higher protein plants like beans and nuts, things like that, and green vegetables.
Yeah, I agree. Also for hormones, that's super important, actually.
Okay.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being, as always, straightforward to the point. I love that about you. And hopefully we can chat again soon.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Good luck to you. Thanks for the good work you're doing, too.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ferman, and thank you everyone for staying on to the podcast today. I really hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I did, especially the part where we went into a little bit of controversy about the herbs. Okay, before I leave you, I just want to urge you to make sure that you get familiar with Dr. Ferman's work, because I promise you his way of eating will change your life, will save your life, will prevent disease, and even reverse it, and I have experienced it fully. Not only that though, I would love for you to share the podcast. Please, if you're listening to it, whether it's on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple, just share it with friends and family. Make sure you leave reviews, because that really, really helps. If you are putting your thumbs up on any channel you're listening to, the algorithm listens to it and says, okay, they like this podcast, let's share it. If I get more and more listeners, I will be able to invite more and more amazing speakers. And I truly want to be able to do that, to bring more awareness and conversations to the world. So guys, thank you again for listening in, and I hope to see you next week. Bye.